Emma Collins checked her watch for the third time as she stood outside the tall glass building. 7:30 in the evening, just like her supervisor had told her. The building looked so big and scary with all its shiny windows reaching up to the sky. She took a deep breath and pushed through the heavy front doors. The lobby was huge and fancy. Emma had never seen anything like it before. The floor was made of smooth marble that reflected the bright lights above. Her old sneakers made small squeaking sounds as she walked across it. She felt very small in such a big place. Emma walked up to the security desk where a man in a blue uniform sat reading a newspaper. He looked up at her and smiled. "You must be the new cleaning girl," he said in a friendly voice. "I'm Pete. Your supervisor called and said you might be a little nervous on your first day here." Emma nodded and felt her cheeks turn red. She was always shy around new people, especially men. "Yes, I'm Emma. I'm supposed to clean the executive offices on the 20th floor." Pete handed her a plastic card and a set of keys. "Here's your access card and the master keys. The elevator is right over there. When you get to the 20th floor, the executive offices are down the hall to the right. Most of the big bosses work late, so be quiet and try not to bother anyone." Emma thanked him and walked to the elevator. Her hands were shaking a little as she pressed the button. She had been cleaning offices for 2 years now, but this was her first time working in such a fancy building. Her old job was at a small office building where everyone knew her name and treated her like family. This place felt cold and important. The elevator moved up quickly and made her stomach feel funny. When the doors opened on the 20th floor, Emma stepped out into a long hallway with thick carpet and expensive-looking paintings on the walls. Everything was so quiet and clean. She pushed her cleaning cart down the hall, looking at the names. On the office doors, the names were written in gold letters that sparkled under the lights. "These people must be very important and very rich," she thought to herself. Emma stopped in front of a door that said Executive Suite in big gold letters. She looked at the paper her supervisor had given her with the office numbers. The paper was a little torn and hard to read, but she was pretty sure this was the right place. She used her access card and heard the door click open. The office was the most beautiful room Emma had ever seen. It was bigger than her entire apartment. There were floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the city lights twinkling like stars. A huge wooden desk sat in the middle of the room, and behind it was a leather chair that looked like it cost more than an Emma made in 6 months. But what surprised Emma the most was how lived-in the office felt, like the cold hallway outside. This room felt warm and personal. There were family photos on the desk, showing a handsome man with his arms around an older woman who must be his mother. Books were stacked everywhere, not just business books, but novels and poetry collections. Emma noticed a half-finished sketch on the desk. It was a drawing of a tree with detailed leaves and branches. The person who drew it was very talented. She would never have expected a big business executive to be an artist too. She started her cleaning routine, being extra careful not to move anything important. Emma always took pride in her work, but tonight she felt especially careful. She dusted every surface gently and organized the scattered papers without reading them as she cleaned. Emma found herself humming softly. It was a habit she had when she felt comfortable. The office felt safe and peaceful, not like the scary place she had imagined. The books on the shelves were about all kinds of subjects: history, science, art, and even some children's books that looked well-read. Emma moved to the bookshelf and began dusting each book carefully. She noticed that many of them had handwritten notes in the margins. Someone had really read and thought about these books. There was even a small section of books about helping people and making the world better. She found a small plant on the windowsill that looked a little sad. Its leaves were brown at the edges and the soil was dry. Emma had always been good with plants. At home, her small apartment was full of plants she had rescued and nursed back to health. She got some water from the small kitchen area in the office and gave the plant a drink. The office had a cozy corner with 2 comfortable chairs and a small table. There were more family photos there, and Emma could see that this executive really loved his family. In one photo, the same handsome man was helping an elderly man in a wheelchair. In another, He was surrounded by children, who looked like his nieces and nephews. Emma was organizing the papers on the small table when she heard the sound of a key in the door. Her heart stopped. She wasn't supposed to be here when anyone was working. Her supervisor had told her that the executives usually left by 6 o'clock. The door opened, and in walked a tall man with dark hair and kind eyes. He was wearing an expensive suit, but his tie was loose, and he looked tired. Emma recognized him immediately from the photos around the office. This was his office, and she was not supposed to be here. Emma dropped the cloth she was holding and felt her face turn bright red. She wanted to run away, but her feet wouldn't move. The man looked just as surprised to see her as she was to see him. "Oh," he said, and his voice was much gentler than Emma had expected. "I didn't know anyone would be here." Emma tried to speak, but only managed a small squeak. She pointed toward her cleaning cart, as if that would explain everything. The man looked at her for a moment, then at his office. Emma followed his gaze and realized that she had made the room look better than it had when she arrived. Everything was organized and clean, and even the sad plant looked happier. "I'm sorry," Emma finally managed to whisper. "I think I might be in the wrong office. I'll leave right now." But as she started to gather her things, something in the man's expression made her pause. He didn't look angry at all. Instead, he looked curious, and maybe even a little pleased. Jake Morrison looked at the young woman standing frozen by his desk. She was small and delicate, with long brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her cleaning uniform was too big for her tiny frame, and she looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "Please don't run away," Jake said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not angry. Actually, I'm impressed." Emma blinked at him in confusion. She had expected yelling, maybe even security guards. Instead, this important man was speaking to her like she was a real person, not just the cleaning lady. "Impressed," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jake smiled and walked slowly toward his desk, being careful not to scare her more. "Look around. I haven't seen my office this organized in months."
Ow!
"And you saved my plant." He pointed to the small green plant on the windowsill that now looked much healthier. Emma followed his gaze and felt a tiny bit of pride. She had always been good at taking care of things, whether they were plants or messy rooms. It just needed some water and love, she said quietly. "Most people wouldn't have noticed it was dying," Jake said. He sat down in one of the comfortable chairs in the corner and gestured to the chair across from him. "Would you like to sit?" Emma's legs were indeed shaking, but she wasn't sure if sitting down with this man was appropriate. He seemed nice, but he was obviously very important and wealthy. She was just a cleaning lady who had made a big mistake. "I should go," Emma said, taking a step toward her cart. "I'm really sorry for being in your office. It won't happen again." "What's your name?" Jake asked, ignoring her attempt to leave. "Emma," she answered automatically, then bit her lip. Probably shouldn't have told him that. "Emma," Jake repeated, and somehow her name sounded nicer when he said it. "I'm Jake, and I'm curious about something." "How did you know exactly how I like my books organized?" Emma looked at the bookshelf where she had carefully arranged his books by subject and size. I just thought about how I would want to find things if I was looking for them. You have so many books about helping people and making things better. I thought you might like them grouped together." Jake's eyebrows rose in surprise. Most people who came into his office only noticed the expensive furniture or the view. This girl had looked at his books and understood something about who he was as a person. "You read?" he asked. Emma nodded, then felt embarrassed. "Not fancy. Books like yours? Just library books mostly. I love stories about people who overcome hard things." "Those are the best kind of stories," Jake said. "Please sit down for a minute. I promise I won't hurt you or get you in trouble." Something in his voice made Emma trust him. She sat down carefully on the edge of the chair, ready to run if she needed to. Jake noticed how nervous she still was. "Can I ask you something? Why were you humming when I came in? You seemed so peaceful." Emma's cheeks turned pink again. "Hey, always hum when I'm comfortable. Your office feels ... safe. Not like other places I clean? Other places?" Usually clean small offices where everyone is stressed and angry. But your office feels like someone happy works here, someone who cares about family. She pointed to the photos on his desk. Jake looked at the pictures of his mother and his nieces and nephews. You're very observant. When you clean someone's space, you learn about them, Emma said, becoming a little braver. You can tell a lot about a person by how they treat their things and what they keep around them. What did you learn about me? Jake asked, genuinely curious. Emma hesitated, then spoke quietly. You worked very hard, but you don't forget about the people you love. You like to learn new things. You try to help others. You're probably lonely sometimes because you work so late. Jake stared at her in amazement. The shy cleaning lady had seen more about him in one evening than most people who had known him for years. You're right about all of that, he said softly, especially the lonely part. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both surprised by how easy it felt to talk to each other. Would you like some coffee? Jake asked suddenly. I have a machine over there, and I was about to make some anyway. Emma wanted to say yes, but she shook her head. I should finish my work and go home. Just one cup, Jake said, already getting up to make the coffee. I promise I'll tell your supervisor that I kept you here because I needed help finding some important papers. He moved around easily like he was used to taking care of himself. When he handed her a cup, their fingers touched briefly, and Emma felt a strange flutter in her stomach. The coffee was the best Emma had ever tasted. She usually drank cheap instant coffee at home, but this was rich and smooth. Tell me about yourself. Emma, Jake said, settling back in his chair. What do you do when you're not making offices beautiful? Emma almost choked on her coffee. I take care of my little brother, she said. He's in college, studying to be a teacher. I have 3 cleaning jobs to help pay for his school. 3 jobs? Jake's voice was full of concern. That must be exhausting. It's worth it, Emma said firmly. Danny is really smart. He's going to help a lot of kids someday. He deserves a chance to follow his dreams. Jake felt something warm spread through his chest. This girl was working herself to death to help her brother, and she talked about it like it was the most natural thing in the world. What about your dreams? What do you want to do with your life? What makes you happy? She stared at him for a long moment, trying to think of an answer. I like taking care of things, she said finally. Plants, messy rooms, people who need help. I guess I dream about having a little house with a big garden someday. Maybe running my own cleaning business where I can treat people fairly. Jake smiled. Those are beautiful dreams. Emma looked at the clock on the wall and jumped up. Oh no. I've been here too long. I really have to go. Wait, Jake said, standing up too. Will I see you again? Very much, Jake said. Honestly, Emma felt her heart do something strange. I clean this floor every Tuesday and Thursday evening. Then I guess I'll be working late on Tuesdays and Thursdays from now on, Jake said with a smile that made Emma's knees feel weak. As Emma gathered her cleaning supplies, she couldn't believe. What had just happened? The most handsome and kind man she had ever met wanted to see her again. Maybe dreams really could come true in the most unexpected ways. 2 weeks had passed since Emma first met Jake in his office. True to his word, he had been working late every Tuesday and Thursday when she came to clean. What started as brief conversations had grown into the best part of both their weeks. Emma was no longer the terrified girl who had dropped her cleaning cloth when Jake walked in. She still felt nervous butterflies in her stomach when she saw him, but now they were the good kind of butterflies, the kind that made her smile instead of wanting to run away. Jake had started leaving small surprises for her. Last Tuesday there was a cup of her favorite chamomile tea waiting on his desk with a note that said, "For Emma, who makes everything better." On Thursday, he had left a book of poetry with a bookmark on a page about finding beauty in simple things. Tonight was Thursday, and Emma found herself hurrying through her other cleaning duties so she could get to Jake's office. She had started bringing small gifts for him too. It's nothing expensive, because she didn't have much money. But thoughtful things that showed she cared. Emma pushed her cart down the familiar hallway, her heart beating faster with each step. When she opened Jake's office door, she saw him sitting at his desk with his head in his hands. He looked tired and stressed. Bad day? Emma asked softly, the way she might talk to her little brother when he was upset. Jake looked up and his whole face changed when he saw her. The worry lines around his eyes relaxed, and he smiled the smile that Emma had come to love. "Much better now," he said, standing up to help her with her cart. This had become their routine. Jake always helped her bring her supplies into his office, even though Emma told him he didn't have to. "I brought you something," Emma said shyly, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a small origami crane made from bright yellow paper. "I know. It's silly, but I learned how to make these when I was little. My grandmother told me that if you make 1,000 cranes, your wish will come true." Jake took the tiny paper bird carefully, like it was made of gold instead of paper. "It's beautiful, Emma. How many have you made so far?" "This is number 47, Emma said. "I started making them after I met you." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. "What are you wishing for?" Emma's cheeks turned pink and she looked down at her feet. "I can't tell you, or it won't come true." Jake smiled and placed the crane carefully on his desk, next to the other small gifts Emma had given him. There was a smooth stone she had found. That looked like a heart, a pressed flower from her apartment building's garden, and a bookmark she had made from cardboard and decorated with tiny drawings. "I have something for you too," Jake said, walking to his bookshelf. He pulled out a small potted plant with tiny white flowers. "I asked the lady at the plant store what kind of flower would be perfect for someone sweet and strong," she recommended. "They're called baby's breath." Emma gasped and took the pot with gentle hands. "Jake, you didn't have to. It's beautiful." "Every beautiful thing should have other beautiful things around it," Jake said quietly. Emma felt her heart do that fluttering thing again. She was beginning to realize that her feelings for Jake were much stronger than friendship, but she tried not to think about it too much. Men like Jake didn't fall in love with girls like her. As Emma began her cleaning routine, Jake watched her work. When she moved around his office like a graceful dancer, humming softly as she dusted and organized. She had memorized exactly how he liked everything arranged, and she always left little improvements that made his workspace more comfortable. "Emma," Jake said as she watered his plants, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course," Emma said, though she felt nervous. "Do you ever think about having a boyfriend? Someone special in your life?" Emma's hand froze on the watering can. She had been hoping Jake would never ask about this because she didn't want to lie to him, but the truth was embarrassing. "I don't really have time for dating," she said quietly. "Between work and taking care of Danny, there's not much time for." "Anything else? And besides, ... double quotes." She trailed off. Emma set down the watering can and fidgeted with her cleaning cloth. "Besides, I'm not the kind of girl that men notice. I'm too quiet and plain. I wear old clothes and my hands are always rough from cleaning. Men want exciting, beautiful women who can talk about interesting things." Jake stood up quickly, his chair rolling backward from the force. "Emma, that's not true at all." "It's okay," Emma said with a sad smile. "I know what I am. I'm happy with my life most of the time. I have Danny and my plants, and..." She looked around his office, "and I have our friendship." Jake walked over to where Emma was standing by the window. The city lights behind her made her hair glow like a halo, and her dark eyes were full of kindness and intelligence. "Emma, look at me," Jake said gently. Emma raised her eyes to meet his, and Jake felt like he was drowning in their depth. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever met," he said seriously. "It's not because of how you look, though you're much prettier than you think. You're beautiful because of who you are inside. You work 3 jobs to help your brother follow his dreams. You rescue dying plants and make origami cranes. You see the good in people and make everything around you better just by being there." Emma stared at him in shock. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. "Any man would be lucky to have you in his life," Jake continued. "And if someone can't see how amazing you are, then he's not worth your time." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Jake... "I mean every word," Jake said, reaching out to touch her hand gently. "You are extraordinary, Emma Collins." Emma looked down at their joined hands. Jake's hand was so much bigger than hers, but it felt perfect wrapped around her fingers. She wanted to tell him that she was falling in love with him, that he made her feel like maybe she could be the kind of woman who deserved good things. but she was too scared. Instead, she squeezed his hand and whispered, "Thank you. No one has ever made me feel special before." "Then they're all fools," Jake said firmly. Emma laughed softly and pulled her hand away, though she immediately missed the warmth of his touch. "I should finish cleaning so you can get back to work." "Actually," Jake said, "I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner with me? Not here in the office. A real dinner at a restaurant?" Emma's heart started beating so fast she thought it might jump out of her chest. Like a date. Exactly like a date," Jake said with a nervous smile. "If you want it to be." Emma wanted to say yes so badly it hurt, but reality crashed down on her like cold water. "I can't, Jake. People would see us together and wonder. What someone like you is doing with someone like me, it would be embarrassing for you." "Emma," Jake said seriously, "I don't care what other people think. I care about you." Emma looked into his sincere face and felt her resolve weakening. Maybe, just maybe, fairy tales could happen to ordinary girls like her. "Okay?" she whispered. "Yes." Jake's smile was brighter than all the city lights outside his window. "Saturday night?" Saturday night, Emma agreed, and for the first time in her life she felt like the luckiest girl in the world. Emma stared at her reflection in the small mirror of the employee restroom. She'd been looking forward to her dinner date with Jake all week, but now she felt sick to her stomach. Something terrible had happened, and she didn't know how to face him. It was Thursday evening, 2 days before their planned Saturday date. Emma had arrived at work early, excited to see Jake and maybe talk about where they would go for dinner. But as she pushed her cart down the hallway toward the executive offices, she heard voices coming from the conference room. The door was slightly open and Emma could see inside. There was Jake, standing at the head of a long table full of important-looking people in expensive suits. He was pointing to charts on a big screen and talking about company profits and business strategies. But what made Emma's blood turn to ice was the nameplate in front of his seat at the table. It read Jake Morrison, Chief Executive Officer. CEO, Chief Executive Officer, the boss of the entire company. Emma had backed away from the door quietly, her mind spinning. Jake wasn't just some hardworking executive like she had thought. He was the most important person in the entire building. He was probably worth millions of dollars. And she was just a cleaning lady who made barely enough money to pay rent. For the past hour, Emma had been hiding in the restroom, trying not to cry. She felt so stupid and embarrassed. No wonder Jake had been so kind to her. He probably felt sorry for the poor little cleaning girl, and maybe he thought it was amusing to be nice to someone so far beneath him. Emma splashed cold water on her face and tried to calm down. She still had work to do, and she couldn't afford to lose this job. But she didn't know how she could face Jake now. Knowing the truth, when Emma finally came out of the restroom, she saw her coworker Lisa coming down the hall with her own cleaning cart. "Emma, you look terrible," Lisa said with concern. Sick, Emma shook her head, but felt tears starting to form in her eyes. Lisa was her best friend at work, the only person who knew about her feelings for Jake. "Lisa, did you know that Jake Morrison is the CEO of this company?" Emma asked quietly. Lisa looked confused. "Of course I know that. Everyone knows that." "Why are you asking?" "I've been cleaning his office for weeks. We've been talking. He asked me out on a date." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Lisa's eyes went wide. "Wait, you mean the Jake you've been telling me about, the one you're falling for, is Jake Morrison? The Millionaire CEO Jake Morrison?" Emma nodded miserably. "I thought he was just a regular executive. I had no idea who he really was." "Oh, honey," Lisa said, putting her arm around Emma's shoulders. "No wonder you look so upset. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Emma said. "I feel so embarrassed. He probably thinks I'm just some silly girl who doesn't know any better. People like him don't really date people like us, Lisa. They just don't." Lisa was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Emma, maybe you're wrong about his reasons. Maybe he really does care about you?" "How can you say that?" Emma asked. "Look at me, Lisa. I'm nobody special. I clean toilets for a living. He could have any woman he wants. Beautiful, educated women who know how to act around rich people. But he chose to Spend time with you, Lisa pointed out. He didn't have to be nice to you. He didn't have to give you gifts or ask you out. Maybe he likes you because you're real and honest, not because he feels sorry for you. Emma wanted to believe Lisa, but her heart was breaking. It can't go on. That date, Lisa. I can't pretend that we're equals when we're not. It would be a lie. Emma spent the rest of her shift avoiding Jake's office. She cleaned all the other offices on the floor first, hoping he would leave before she had to face him. But when she finally pushed her cart to his door at 9 o'clock, she could see his light was still on. Emma took a deep breath and knocked softly on the door. "Come in," Jake called out. Emma opened the door but stayed near the entrance, not bringing her cart inside like she usually did. Jake looked up from his desk and smiled, but his expression changed when he saw how upset Emma looked. "Emma, what's wrong?" he asked, standing up immediately. "I know who you are," Emma said quietly, not meeting his eyes. Jake felt his stomach drop. This was the moment he had been dreading. "Emma, let me explain, ... You're the CEO," Emma continued. "You own this whole company. You're worth millions of dollars." "Yes," Jake said simply. "I am." Emma finally looked at him, and Jake could see the hurt in her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" Jake ran his hands through his hair, looking frustrated and sad. "Because I knew this would happen. I knew you'd look at me differently if you found out." "Of course I look at you differently," Emma said, her voice getting stronger. "You lied. To me, Jake, you let me think you were just a regular person like me." "I am a regular person," Jake said desperately. "Money doesn't change who I am inside, doesn't it?" Emma asked. "You have more money than I'll ever see in my entire life. You could buy 100 cleaning companies like the one I work for. We live in completely different worlds." Jake stepped toward her, but Emma backed away. "Emma, please. None of that matters to me. What matters is how I feel about you, how you feel about me." Emma laughed bitterly. "You feel sorry for me? Poor little cleaning lady who doesn't know her place." "That's not true," Jake said firmly. "I'm falling in love with you." Emma felt like she'd been slapped. "Don't say that. Don't make this worse by lying about your feelings, too." "I'm not lying," Jake said, his voice breaking. "Emma, you're the best thing that's happened to me in years. You make me remember what's important in life. You see me for who I really am, not what I own." Emma shook her head, tears streaming down her face now. "You don't understand. My supervisor, Mrs. Williams, heard rumors about us. She called me into her office today and told me I was being inappropriate with the executives. She said if she heard any more stories about me bothering important people, she'd fire me." Jake's face went dark with anger. "She said what?" "She's right, Jake. I was being inappropriate. I forgot my place. I'm the help, and you're the boss. It's all we can ever be, Emma. That's not—" "I can't see you anymore," Emma said quickly before she lost her courage. "I can't go on that date. I need this job, Jake. I need it to help Danny finish school. I can't risk losing it because I was stupid enough to think that someone like you could really care about someone like me." Emma turned and ran from the office before Jake could say another word. She left her cleaning cart behind and took the stairs instead of the elevator. Crying all the way down 20 flights, Jake stood alone in his office, staring at the door Emma had fled through. On his desk sat the origami crane she had made for her. He picked it up with shaking hands. He had always known this day would come, but he hadn't expected it to hurt so much. Emma was wrong about so many things, but she was right about one thing. They did live in different worlds. The question was whether love was strong enough to bridge that gap. Jake looked out his window at the city lights below and made a decision. If Emma thought he was going to give up on her that easily, she didn't know him very well at all. For 3 days, Emma didn't go to work. She called in sick, which wasn't entirely a lie, because her heart felt so broken that her whole body ached. She spent those days crying in her small apartment, watering her plants, and trying to convince herself that she had done the right thing. Lisa called her every day, begging her to come back to work and talk to Jake. But Emma was too scared and too proud. She had embarrassed herself enough already. On Monday morning, Emma finally dragged herself back to work. She had to face reality. She needed this job, and she couldn't hide forever. She made her supervisor promise to change her schedule so she wouldn't have to clean the executive floor anymore. Emma was assigned to clean the lower floors where the regular office workers sat. It was different from the fancy executive offices. But Emma tried to focus on her work and forget about Jake. She was emptying trash cans on the 10th floor when she heard people talking excitedly near the elevators. Did you hear? The CEO is calling an all-company meeting this afternoon, one woman said. Jake Morrison never calls company meetings unless something big is happening, another person replied. I wonder what it's about. Emma tried not to listen, but her heart started beating faster at the mention of Jake's name. She wondered if he was okay, if he was still working late in his beautiful office. If he missed their conversations as much as she did. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, Emma was cleaning a conference room when she heard an announcement over the building's speaker system. All employees, please report to the main auditorium for a company meeting. This includes all cleaning staff, security guards, and maintenance workers. Emma's supervisor, Mrs. Williams, poked her head into the conference room. You heard the announcement? Emma, everyone has to go. Emma's stomach turned to knots. She didn't want to see Jake in front of hundreds of people. She didn't want to be reminded of how important he was and how small she was. The auditorium was packed with employees from every floor of the building. Emma found a seat in the very back corner, hoping to stay invisible. She saw Lisa a few rows ahead, and their eyes met. Lisa gave her an encouraging smile. When Jake walked onto the stage, Emma felt like she couldn't breathe. He looked handsome in his dark suit, but she could see that he looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes that hadn't been there before. Thank you all for coming, Jake said into the microphone. His voice carried clearly through the large room. I called this meeting because I need to address some important issues about how we treat each other in this company. Emma frowned. This wasn't what she had expected him to talk about. I've recently learned that some managers in this company have been treating certain employees unfairly, Jake continued. Specifically, I've heard that some of our hardest working people have been threatened and disrespected simply because they're kind and honest. Emma's heart started pounding. She had a terrible feeling that Jake was talking about her. Let me be very clear about something, Jake said, his voice getting stronger. Every person who works in this building is valuable. Every person deserves to be treated with respect, whether they're a CEO or a cleaning lady, whether they make $1 million a year or minimum wage. The auditorium was completely silent. Everyone was hanging on Jake's every word. I want to tell you about someone who works in this building, Jake said. Someone who represents the very best of what this company should be. She works 3 jobs to help her brother go to college. She takes care of dying plants and makes origami birds. She sees the good in people and makes everything around her better. Emma felt dizzy. Jake was talking about her in front of the entire company. This person was threatened by her supervisor for being friendly with executives. She was told she was being inappropriate for treating people like human beings instead of just their job titles. Emma could see Mrs. Williams sitting a few rows in front of her, and the woman's face was turning red. I want everyone in this company to know that. Kindness is never inappropriate, Jake said firmly. Treating people with respect is never wrong. And anyone who has a problem with that has a problem with me. Jake looked around the auditorium, and for a moment, Emma thought. His eyes found hers in the back corner. Emma Collins, Jake said, and Emma felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her. If you're here, I want you to know that your job is safe. Not because I'm protecting you, but because you're exactly the kind of employee this company needs more of. The entire auditorium turned to look for Emma. She wanted to sink into her chair and disappear, but hundreds of eyes were searching for her. Emma, Jake said again, would you please come up here? Emma shook her head frantically, but Lisa had spotted her and was pointing in her direction. Soon, everyone was looking at her, and she had no choice but to stand up. Her legs felt like jelly. As she walked down the long aisle toward the stage, Jake's eyes never left her face, and she could see so much love and determination in them that she almost started crying right there in front of everyone. When Emma reached the stage, Jake held out his hand to help her up the steps. His touch was warm and steady, just like she remembered. Everyone, Jake said, still holding Emma's hand. I want you to meet the woman who taught me that the most important things in life can't be bought. They can only be found in unexpected moments with the right person. Emma stared at him in shock. Was he really saying these things in front of the entire company? Emma, Jake said, turning to face her fully. I know I should have told you who I was from the beginning. I was afraid that if you knew I was the CEO, you'd treat me differently. But I realize now that keeping it a secret was wrong. Jake. Emma whispered, You don't have to do this in front of everyone. Yes, I do, Jake said firmly. Because I want everyone to know how I feel about you. I want them to know that I'm not ashamed of caring about you. I'm proud of it. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small origami crane made from golden paper. You told me you were making 1,000 cranes to make a wish come true, Jake said. Well, I've been making them too. And I know what I'm wishing for. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she took the golden crane. I'm wishing for you to give us another chance, Jake said. I'm wishing for you to believe that love is more important than money or social status. I'm wishing for you to marry me someday. Auditorium erupted in gasps and whispers, but Emma only heard her own heartbeat. You really mean it? Emma asked, her voice shaking. I've never meant anything more in my life, Jake said. I love you, Emma Collins. Not because I feel sorry for you, not because you're different from me, but because you're the best person I've ever known. Emma looked out at the sea of faces watching them, then back at Jake's sincere eyes. She thought about all the reasons why this was crazy, why it couldn't work, why they were too different. Then she thought about how he made her feel safe and special, how he saw the good in her when she couldn't see it herself, how he was willing to risk his reputation to protect her. I love you too, Emma said. And Jake's smile was brighter than the sun, as Jake pulled her into his arms and kissed her in front of the entire company. Emma realized that fairy tales really could come true. Sometimes love was strong enough to bridge any gap, even the one between a shy maid and a millionaire CEO. 6 months later, Emma quit her cleaning job to become Jake's assistant, learning the business from the ground up. A year after that, Jake proposed with a ring hidden inside origami crane number 1000, and they all lived happily ever after, proving that the best love stories begin with the most unexpected encounters.